welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany and welcome to day 4 of the 12 days of Christmas. So for the past couple of years, I have had a TBR every single year to try to read some books on my shelves that either have been sitting there for a really long time or I bought at like a really good price and I'm like, am I actually gonna read these? And so I have created a project that I do every single year called the Read or Rid Project that I originally saw someone else do who doesn't have a booktube channel anymore. So I kind of stole it from her, but I've been doing it every single year. And I found that this past year, it was really difficult for me to squeeze in the amount of books that I chose because both years I chose 24 books. So that was 2 books a month, which seemed very attainable. And it would have been normally, except for that I have committed to a lot more buddy reads and a lot more book clubs through my Patreon, and now I have an in-person book club as well, which is wonderful, and other books that I just want to read. And so it was really difficult for me to find the time to read all 24 books this past year. So when planning for 2024, my plan was to just choose 1 book a month, because that is still 12 books that I am either reading or getting off of my shelves. So I decided to use Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, which I love doing. I've done every single year since she started it, but the past couple of years I've done the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge and the Buzzwordathon to try to do both, and that just hasn't worked out. So I love Chantel in general, but I love her Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. Every single year it's managed to be different and unique. I have a link to 2024's announcements, that way you can see that. If you haven't already, she does a much better job explaining it than I will, but essentially she's chosen 2 paths that you can follow. One following Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and the other following L.M. Montgomery. Once you choose a path, you have to stay with that path, but I think 3 times during the year, the prompts are the same and then you have the opportunity to switch. So for most of the year, I am going to be following the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle track, but there's gonna be like one section where for like 2 months, I'm gonna be following L.M. Montgomery's just because I had books that better fit those prompts. So I'm gonna go through each of the prompts that I chose and the book that I chose for that prompt. In addition, I did choose like 4 or 5 other books that I'm just kind of throwing on here, and I'm okay with not getting to them, but I am still semi-interested in them. So that's why they're on this list. Most of them are middle grade, so I'm hoping to at least try a chapter of them during middle grade March, and that's the plan. So in January, the prompt was to read a book with a dog on the cover, which is supposed to be like Hound of the Baskervilles. So I am going to be reading The Curious Incidents of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. And this is a book that I think I actually got within the last year. I haven't had it for that long, but I'm just kind of hesitant to read it because I've heard mixed things about it and I just don't know. But this is the first book on this list. The second prompt is a book that's under 250 pages. This one I have had for at least 2 years, maybe more. And that book is That Was Then, This Is Now by S.E. Hinton. This is the sequel to The Outsiders, which I read a couple of years ago and just absolutely loved. And then I found this at a thrift store and picked it up. But it doesn't have the same good reviews that The Outsiders have, and I haven't heard very good things about it. The cover is just beautiful. Wouldn't you want to read that? Oh, there's more in the back. Actually, no, that's just these 2 people from the front. So that's my pick for February. For March, the prompt is More Than 2 Points of View. And that was difficult for me to find any books that I own that have more than 2 POVs other than like the Stormlight Archives, which I have already read, so I'm not, and this is supposed to be books I'm trying to get rid of. So I think that this is More Than 2 Points of View, but I'm not really sure, so I'm kind of fudging this a little bit. And that's Salmon Fishing in the Yemen. This is another book that I picked up for like 5 cents or something ridiculous like that within the last year. Picked it up, realized that I'm pretty sure it's epistolary, and I'm just not a fan of epistolary novels. I'm very much in the minority with that, but I find it really hard for me to get invested in the story or care at all when it's letters for some reason. I don't know why. So I think that this has multiple people writing to each other, and there might be diary entries and other stuff in there too, which when it's intermixed with diary entries and other things, that helps it be just a little bit more personalized to me, but we'll see. I don't really know for sure if this is more than 2 POVs. It's for sure at least 2, but I think it's more than 2. April has a prompt that is for both Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Ellen Montgomery, and that is a redheaded main character. And I know that this is probably going to be one of those books that you'll either be surprised I haven't read, or you'll be surprised that it's on this list because it's more of a beloved children's classic. So it doesn't seem like one that I would be willing to get rid of, but that's Caddy Woodlawn, which on the cover of this, her hair doesn't look that red, but apparently she's redheaded. And this is a book that I bought literally when Claire was like 5 or 6, and we've never picked it up. I was gonna read it to her. She never wanted me to. She's never picked it up on her own. I've never cared to pick it up on my own, and I don't really care about reading it as much. I don't know if it'll have the same impact with me, you know, being an adult. So I don't know. So that is my pick for that month. Continuing on the Doyle track for May, the prompt is a new to you author, and I have a couple Kurt Vonnegut books. And I've never really felt like picking them up. Again, heard mixed things about his works. And I actually put a poll on Instagram to help me decide, because I have this one and I have Jailbird. And this is the one that won the poll. So I'm going to do Slaughterhouse 5. For June, you have a science fiction or fantasy. Most of the sci-fi or fantasy on my shelves are ones that I would not consider getting rid of. And they're ones that I do really want to read. This is one that I think I bought in my first ever book haul on BookTube. I know I got it from Book Outlet, and I never hear anyone talking about it, despite the fact that this is a prolific and beloved author, and I've never even cared to even attempt to pick it up. And that's Legion by Brandon Sanderson. And I love Brandon Sanderson a lot, but I haven't cared about picking this one up. And I'm pretty sure that it's like a series of like interconnected short stories or novellas. So I think it's about a man who has like multiple personalities or something like that. I don't really know. I think it's on the sci-fi end of things more than fantasy. So I'm slightly intrigued by it, but also like I've had it for years and never wanted to pick it up. So in July, the prompt is a short story collection, regardless of which track you take. And I was considering using Legion for that, but then I used it for sci-fi or fantasy, so I had to pick a different short story collection. I'm going with this Nathaniel Hawthorne short story collection. This is Young Goodman Brown and Other Stories. I don't know what the other stories are. I know Young Goodman Brown is like a Faustian short story, so I am interested in that one. But the other stories in here are Dr. Heidegger's Experiment, The Birthmark, Rappaccini's Daughter, Roger Malvin's Burial, The Artist of the Beautiful, and My Kinsman Major Molyneux. And I loved The Scarlet Letter when I read it in high school, but I recently read The House of Seven Gables, which is another Hawthorne that's actually pretty well loved, and I hated it. Like, it made it into like my top worst books of 2022. Like, I think it was number 2. Like, I hated it. And so I have not had any desire to pick up another Hawthorne because I hated the writing in it, and I hated the story, and I hated the character development. I just hated everything about it. And so I picked this one because this is one that I either need to read or get off my shelves. So in August, I have the opportunity to switch to Ellen Montgomery, and I did, because I didn't really have books that fit the next prompt or two for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So for Ellen Montgomery, the prompt is a book with water on the cover. So I'm going with The Hotel in the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. This is a historical fiction, takes place, I think, during World War II, like Japanese internment camps. I don't know if it's dual timeline. I kind of hope not, because that's just usually not my favorite. I usually don't care about the modern day timeline and think that it was pointless for it to be there. So I don't really know, but this one I picked up at a library book sale for like 10 cents a couple of summers ago. I keep saying I'm gonna read it, but I feel like there's like an oversaturation in the market of World War II historical fiction, and so I am never motivated to pick up World War II historical fiction unless it takes place in like Russia or Asia, because those are kind of like parts of the story that you don't hear as frequently. So I don't know, but this one is going to be for that month. In September, the prompt was either a book that has a musical element or just is historical fiction. So I decided to read Hester. I actually picked this book up at a library book sale also, I think for like 25 cents, 10 cents, something like that. I think it has the loveliest cover. And speaking of Nathaniel Hawthorne, this I think is loosely based on Scarlet Letter. I have not heard good things about this. I was like, oh, I love the Scarlet Letter. And so I picked it up. And the only people who I've heard who have read it didn't like it. So I really don't know where I'm gonna land on it. For October, we're back to sharing prompts, so you can switch back after this one. And the prompt for both tracks is nonfiction. So I went with Golden Lads by Daphne du Maurier, which you can see is an ex-library book. So this is another book that I picked up at a library book sale. I think I've had this one for a couple of years, and I picked it up because Daphne du Maurier wrote it. But it is like a biography of Sir Francis Bacon, Anthony Bacon, and their friends. And I don't care to read about them. The only reason I picked it up is because I was so intrigued that Daphne du Maurier wrote a nonfiction about Francis Bacon, of all people. So I think that there's the potential for me to really like this because I love her writing style, but also I'm just like really not interested in the subject matter. So that's why this one got chosen. So I'm back to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle for the last 2 months. November is a book that intimidates you. And this does not intimidate me because of the length, because it's really not very long. It's around 300 pages long. It intimidates me because I read another book by the author and found the language dry and difficult. And so I don't know how I feel about this one. And that's Moll Flanders by Daniel Defoe. There's a chance I could really, really like this, but I read Robinson Crusoe with Claire in school, and she enjoyed it way more than I did because she just really likes survival stories like that. But I was like bored out of my mind almost the entire time reading it. I think I gave it like 2.5 or 3 stars because I could see its literary merit. I thought it had some beautifully written scenes about spiritual truths and stuff, but it was not an easy read, and I didn't really love it that much. It took us forever to get through that book. So I've been looking at Moll Flanders with great trepidation and just wondering, should I just get rid of this ever since I've read Robinson Crusoe? So we'll see how I feel about Moll Flanders. And lastly, for December, there was actually 4 options for December. And so I ended up going with the prompt that is a standalone, and I chose The Bean Trees by Barbara Kingsolver. I read the Poisonwood Bible. I think I might have actually had that on my Reader Read project a couple of years ago and ended up really loving it. But I didn't really feel that motivated to pick up any other of her works. I have like 2 or 3 others of hers sitting on my shelf because I haven't heard great things about the other books of hers, although I had heard really mixed things about the Poisonwood Bible too, and kind of rightfully so. It was a mixed bag for me, although I ended up pretty much enjoying it. So this one is like such a toss-up for me. I have no clue what it's about. Like the cover tells you nothing. I have no clue what this is about at all. Oh, interesting. It starts with a character who's growing up in rural Kentucky, which I currently live in rural Kentucky. And she has 2 goals: to avoid pregnancy and to get away. She succeeds on both counts when she picks up a 55 Volkswagen and heads west. But by the time our plucky, if unlikely heroine pulls up on the outskirts of Tucson, Arizona at an auto repair shop called Jesus' Lord Tires that also happens to be a sanctuary for Central American refugees, she's inherited a 3-year-old American Indian girl named Turtle. That's a lot. That was like 1 sentence. And that was a lot. There was a lot in that sentence. I have no clue what to expect with this. So those are the books that I'm doing for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. I have a couple other books here. Like I've said, they are mostly middle grade. The only one that is not is this short story collection by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Flappers and Philosophers. So this has, I don't even know how many short stories in it, 2, 4, 6, 8 short stories. And I have a very mixed relationship with F. Scott Fitzgerald in that I really loved The Great Gatsby. I've read it multiple times, and I've read 2 other books by him. One that was okay and one that I just downright hated. And I don't know if it's the time period that he's writing in, but there's like so much kind of like glorified infidelity in his books, and I really don't like that. I don't mind infidelity in books if there are like real world consequences and showing like, hey, it's not your best choice. But I really don't like glorified infidelity. And so I don't know. This is one that I'm like, I'm not gonna pick this up unless I put it on a list. Like I said, the others are middle grade. So we have Out of the Dust by Karen Hesse. This is a, I think, free verse? Yeah, free verse novel about the Dust Bowl. Not a huge fan of free verse novels. Sometimes they're okay, but it's rare for me to actually like free verse novels. So it's been sitting on my shelves for forever. I got it for free. Another book I got for free is The Rescuers, which I love the Disney movie, and I didn't even know it was a book. And I think I had this at one point and then got rid of it and ended up repurchasing it or something like that. Or I was gonna get rid of it and then I decided not to. I don't know. It's less than 200 pages and has like the, I think, original illustrations in it. Oh my gosh, this cat. Have you ever seen medieval portraits of cats? That's what that reminds me of, like the face. Oh my gosh. Also have this really adorable book that I kind of need a push to read by William Steig, who I love Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. This is Abel's Island. And so it does have pictures, but it's not a picture book. It's more of a chapter book. And then lastly, a book that I picked up at a little free library probably a year and a half, 2 years ago is In the Year of the Boar and Jackie Robinson by Betty Bow Lord. And this is one of those books that people recommend often, but I have like no reason to read it. And I'm kind of like, I just took it so I could take something, I think. It's not a book that was on my radar or that I really cared about. And my daughter's not interested in reading it. So it's just taking up valuable shelf real estate. So that's my read or read project for this year with the 12 books that for sure I am going to have on TBRs. And then an additional 5 books that are just kind of like, hopefully I get to them, but if I don't, kind of like, whatever. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. I'd love to hear if there are any of these books that you actually liked, because I think that there are some on here that have the potential to be books that I would like. I think Caddy Woodlawn's a possibility. I think this one is a possibility. I might like Moll Flanders. I might like the Hawthorne short stories. I will probably like Legion by Brandon Sanderson, but I don't know if I care. So there's just books on here that I'm like, some of which I'm fully anticipating not liking at all, like Salmon Fishing in the Yemen. I don't think I'm gonna like that. But some of them I'm just like, maybe I'll like them. I don't know. So I'd love to hear from you if there are any of these that you really did enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, including the remaining 12 days of Christmas videos. And I will see you again tomorrow.